All right. Welcome to episode 106 of the podcast. Jake Blanchard here. My guest today is a really interesting guy. One of the things that happens when you run a podcast is that folks will reach out to you on different social media platforms and they'll ask, hey, can I come on the show? A lot of times I tend to ignore some of these individuals or politely say no thank you. And the reason is you do a little research on some of these folks and I don't know why they're asking. They don't really know why they're asking. But in this case, Brian Whitaker, I had to invite him on. You know, he's one of those guys. He's a military veteran. He's been an elected official in Delaware. He's involved in supporting those with autism feel safe in Brazilian jiu-jitsu gyms around the country. And he runs an organization called Grapplers for Autism. And he also provides a variety of peer support services with those who are impacted with or without various disabilities. I enjoyed having him on the show, man. I hope you take some time and listen to our discussion. He's an interesting guy. Make sure to check out viewwillhunt.com. The code JBP saves you 15% on your order of athletic wear, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu rash guards, fight gear, and more. Everyone wants to eat, but few will hunt. And also Fellowship Brand, beard oil, tattoo balm, so much more. Fellowshipbrand.com, code JBP saves you some cash at checkout. Enjoy episode 106. All right. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Today, I sit down with a U.S. Army veteran, an entrepreneur, a nonprofit leader, a public servant, and a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Brian Whitaker joins me on the show. Welcome, sir. Nice to have you.
Well, thank you very much, and good morning, Jake.
Yeah, man. So first thing is, geographically, you're out in Delaware. I think you're the first person on the podcast that is located out in Delaware. I don't know a whole lot about the state. I know it's kind of small, ish. And I've been to Wilmington, I believe, which I think is a little north of where you're at. But what's up with Delaware, man? You've been out there your whole life, or you find yourself there later in life?
Well, I was born in Delaware County, which is in Pennsylvania, Upland, Pennsylvania, nearby Westchester, and that my family started out there. My father is a North Carolina transplant. My mother always lived in Aston, Pennsylvania. They had met, my parents stayed around that region, and so my brother and I, we lived our younger years in Pennsylvania, and then some family turn of events had occurred. And then we had to leave to Newcastle County, Delaware, and my great uncle had recommended my mother to move into Newcastle, Delaware, Newcastle City. And from 1986, 7-ish, up down in that time period, we lived in the city of Newcastle, and I lived in Newcastle, Delaware for a good portion of my life.
Oh, very cool, man. And what's it like over there in Newcastle?
Well, in the past, that Newcastle was a very affluent city. It had a ferry that goes to New Jersey. It had gambling on the water. It had many stores and shop businesses. It was very vibrant and prosperous. However, I also had a movie theater, everything possible you could imagine. But however, nowadays that there's not a lot of jobs, that everything has went down tubes over the years, and that, being from a little boy to adulthood, I saw the gradual decline
Yeah, you know, a lot of those East Coast, Northeast cities that were booming during times of industry, especially toward the 80s, 90s, and all through the 2000s contracted greatly. So it sounds like the region that you're in kind of caught that as well. But I know like cities like Pittsburgh, for instance, which kind of have had a tech revival. Like they've they kind of like boomed in other industries. Is there anything in Delaware that's exciting right now?
Um,
And it's fine if something doesn't come to mind.
there's really nothing exciting about. All I know is that people have been trying to push the breweries. People have been make beer making. People have been trying to really push hospitality. People have been trying to um, push sports and athletics.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Uh,
some good stuff definitely going around in the area, but there's nothing like, you know, new businesses coming to town, those types of things. That's kind of what I was
no, no,
yeah.
no, no.
So I didn't have you on to talk about Newcastle, Delaware, man. You're an interesting guy. I want to start unpacking that. Um, dude, where do we start in this? Because for me, it's like military seems like the most interesting place to go, but like I'd be interested what childhood was like and then what led you into a career in the military.
Well, childhood was a very special time for me, for my brother and I, in that my parents were and still are excellent two individuals, um, very loving individuals. My childhood, I started off in Pennsylvania, and that I have uh, vague glimpses and very vague flashbacks of my early years, which was always great. Always remember different neighbors. The neighbors we still constantly keep in contact with, uh, even though they have moved from the original neighborhood. Some of them did, some of them are always there. And they're like family, and that, everybody raised everyone's child, and all the doors were unlocked, and there was the park, and um, to go to, of course, the family dog, Bruno. Bruno, the German Shepherd Collie, wonderful dog. He
Yeah.
used to, yeah, he used to push my, uh, I don't know, it's not a, like, not a go-kart, but like a big wheel, not a big wheel. I don't know what it's like, three wheels and it,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I think it's a big wheel. Yeah, let's just
a,
call it a big wheel.
a big wheel, and the dog would push it around the block. And that, you know, my my dog was the center of my life. Originally, it was my brother knew the dog first, and I came along, and that, I went to Head Start, and I remember, many wonderful things going on in my childhood. And you got my grandfather, my mom's father, and as children, you just don't really understand life and different things that go on. And
Yeah.
all I know is that my grandmother ended up having cancer, and that, I she had her leg amputated, and I, had no problems in touching her amputated leg. And they thought, wow, he's not like intimidated or turned off by it. But I remember her walking around with her prosthetic leg. And I also remember a woman that keep on being a theme in my grandfather's life around the same time. And she worked at one of the markets nearby the house, nearby Butt Lane. And that she would then suddenly like appear at the house and different stuff, and she became a familiar face. Couldn't understand why, but my parents understood. But um, my parents were going to move into my grandfather's house. They built an addition to the house. On top of that, we sold our house in Aston on Finchman Street. In that, I remember meeting the incoming people um, that that were coming in as we were leaving, and I was telling them as a little boy, where to put different things in the house, in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Mom really made that grained in my mind at the early age. But in any event, my grandfather had sold the house, left my parents stranded, and so we lived with different neighbors. And that my grandfather got married in Hawaii. And while that was happening, as we living in different houses, we then, well, a house or two. Yeah, at first it was.
I think we're diving real deep into the details here, Brian.
I'm sorry, I just remember to the Harrisons, then we moved to
Yeah.
Uncle Bud's place in Newcastle County. But the point of the matter is that
You bounced around a little bit, had a pretty nice childhood for the most part, had a dog that you loved and remembered. Is that fair?
yes, that is fair, and wonderful childhood, and and some.
So what led you from that into the military? Like, what was the interest that pulled you in that direction into the Army?
Well, here's the thing is that well, I've always thought about the military because in my college days, I was advocating on behalf of the Paralyzed Veterans Association, and I my father was telling me stories about Vietnam and war movies, which doesn't really interest me. But in any event, that I always wondered, what would be my place in the military, and that I never really realized it would be that 9/11 came, and that really stirred up a lot of patriotic emotions. And then after I graduated from college, I did go into the military.
What'd you graduate from college with?
I graduated college with a Bachelor of Science in Behavioral Science. And yeah, I did. I mean, I had a 2.75.
Yeah. Well, hey, a college degree is a college degree, my brother.
It is, yes.
I always say this: 50% of doctors graduated at the bottom half of their class.
And that's probably true.
It's definitely true, but you don't know which one's which when they're operating on you. So I wouldn't worry about anyone's GPA.
No. And people that are stuck on GPAs, well,
Yeah.
Oh well, I'm proud of my 2 points. It could be a 2.0. It could be a 1. So
So you got out of college, you studied behavioral science, and then you felt patriotic after 9/11. You decide, hey, I'm going to go into the military. You went down to a recruiter's office and just signed up for the Army?
that's exactly what I did, and that first I did the Army National Guard. I went to Fort Knox, and I went to Fort Knox for boot camp, and then afterwards I went to the 153rd MP Company.
Okay.
And then I was a cook in training. That I worked, stayed home, was in the guard, had a weekend drills, and then we had uh, some long weekend drills on Bethany Beach, Delaware. And then I had decided within the year to go into the regular army. And unbeknownst to me, that I didn't realize that the entire MP company almost was going on the active duty army. And so I then went to study to become an ammunition specialist. And then from there, I went to South Korea, had a great time there. I'm at the dark side of the army in Korea. But however, I always wanted to go to Korea because when I was little, that I fell in love with a girl named Annie in elementary school. In that she's
Young
from
love.
yeah, Taiwan. She was from Taiwan, and I did all these circus acts just to get her attention. But in any event, with a friend of mine, in any event, through my childhood and teenage years, I always I always romanced about her, different possibilities. But in any event, that I always, wish to go to the Orient, and then, Uncle Sam sent me the ticket to go to
There you
the
go.
Orient. There you go. And so I still remember the girl from elementary school. And so so then I thought Korea was very, very nice. And then I went to Germany next. And I found that I could relate to Germany and the Germans a lot better. Didn't know back then, but now I know. And 23andMe that I'm part German. I always knew I was part French, but in any event,
Yeah.
that I kind of felt like very at home in Germany. And that when I was little, to that point in my life and still now, that I always been interested in classical music. I play clarinet, still do, and that I was interested in music theory, and that I just embraced the sculptures, the art, the music, everything about Germany, and that Germany has many other fun things to offer too. Very fun things. But in any event, while I was there, I went to Kuwait in Iraq, and a joint base Balad in Iraq, and that a lot of civilians don't get it, that you don't have to be like right on the front lines to be in the front lines. Being on a base in a war is the front lines. And so all the above is the front lines, and mortars were trying to hit the base. You have bullets into your trailer and also your desk. You go to lunch, you find a bullet in your desk. It's war in Ukraine had brought back memories of me going up to the fence and see the mushroom clouds go up in the horizon. And although I wasn't frightened, but I just felt how real it actually is.
Yeah.
And so I remember at night in Iraq, you see, like a fireworks display. Unfortunately, I had to cut my time short in Iraq because of some physical illnesses that were unexplained. But in any event,
You come back to the States. How was it? How was it leaving the military and coming back into civilian life?
it was quite a challenge. I came home to a town that is completely different. I ran for mayor and have people tell me they don't know who I am, but yet I lived there for a long time of my life.
Yeah.
You go to community events.
So you just came back and you're like, I'm running for mayor. I'm
Yeah,
coming
it's
back to my right.
exactly.
You walk into town, you're like, hey, yeah, I've been gone a little bit. I've been traveling overseas. I've been international, doing this military thing. You guys need a mayor? Brian's here
Yeah,
to be mayor. I like that.
yeah. And so I ran for mayor, and I was very happy to do it. And I ran against my next door neighbor, who was the mayor, and a handful of other people. When it comes to these city elections, everyone goes out there.
Yeah.
I was running against 4 people, and that trying to fit back into my community. Some people said, well, how come you never contacted me? And I'm like, well, I never had your address, but yeah, I just always yearned to come back home to meet you. So
Yeah.
it's nothing personal. So, but in any event, I know I always wondered, what was necessary, wasn't necessary that time period, because the VA gave me lots of medical appointments, and that I was on this big medical mill for 3 years. And it was kind of a tough time because the VA was like, certain people in the VA said, well, you don't have to work. If you don't work, that'd be fine. My mom's like, well, you gotta work. Everyone's like kind of like giving me a roadmap of my life. I just remember that, different organizations and lawyers will always want to double down on my to get potential benefits, and I kind of felt like that there has to be more than going to medical appointments of different sorts. And work is one of my things. So I volunteered a lot at different organizations, and to kind of get
what kind of organizations?
I volunteered at the arts, the community arts center.
Okay.
I volunteered there. Special Olympics on the swim team. I volunteered a big handful of organizations and along those lines, and to fill in the gap of time.
Yeah.
And that while I was volunteering, I wanted to volunteer in the city of Wilmington, and that's where I landed my first job from being out from the Army 3 years later, at a place called Open Door. I was working with individuals who have severe mental illnesses, and also adults who have special needs such as autism and other intellectual disabilities.
Yeah.
And so it was quite a mix of the people at that center. The place ended up closing, and then I moved on. But I'm glad at least that I did take the initiative to volunteer, find out what's going on. Also volunteer with the Disabled American Veterans.
Yeah.
So
let me make sure that I'm tracking. So you came back, you had an illness. With that illness, it's 3 years of doctor bills and hospital visits and all kinds of different people that have perspectives on what you should do moving forward in your life. You said, hey, I'm just going to go out and start volunteering a little bit, and get my head screwed on and just try to figure out what I'm passionate about and, where I can put my time and my interest. You found a lot of different organizations. two questions. First question is, I know that you ran for and got elected to public office, and then
Yes.
also that you started an LLC, an enterprise around, a variety of different things. Some of it helping folks with special needs and disabilities. I want you to unpack that, as well as a whole plethora of other services that you provide. So, which one came first?
So basically, almost everything came first. What I mean is that, I had a business license for Whitaker's Fitness Solutions, and I had a business license for notary, and I, wanted to continue to work in mental health and peer support. And I've all these, ideas all over the place, and that it's just, a big pile of paper, not going anywhere. And then I had decided to to find a way to consolidate my business. And so Whitaker's business entity came about. And so it's an LLC series. So it's LLC 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
And that, so I wanted to have something structured and organized. And what was the other questions?
Yeah. So, what I was really interested was, you've got these two paths that sort of spurred out of this. One was public service
Mhm.
as the Newcastle city clerk, correct?
Yes.
And then you had this entrepreneurship, this enterprise that you're building, this,
Okay.
all these services. So I was kind of asking which one came first, or kind of take me through your thought
Well,
process as an entrepreneur and as a public servant.
exactly. And so they both kind of developed simultaneously. So to step back a little bit, so I earned my master's degree in human services. I then worked on a drug and alcohol certificate through Delaware Technical and Community College, and that I had always been interested in politics. So in the time I was volunteering, there was other people that wanted me to be part of their quasi-political organizations that have to deal with government and disabilities. And somewhere along the line that somebody had, no, what it was that I put in an application to be appointed by the governor of Delaware to be on some type of a board. Somebody was looking through the paperwork
Yeah.
and found the application and asked if I would like to. Also, I got a recommendation too, but by whom I don't know, to be a part of the board for audiology, speech pathology, and hearing aid dispensaries. Okay, so the governor's office had asked me if I would do it. They called back and I said yes. And I said, but I'm with the Independent Party of Delaware. The governor said fine, he likes the independents. And so I was sent to the board discussing those medical issues on the behalf of, and regulated medical issues on the behalf of Delawareans. On that time period, I was having, the thoughts about, what to do with my business, what to do with my life with this. And so I then used my volunteerism plus the board plus whatever jobs I had in between to run for city clerk for the city of Newcastle. I reached out to 788 voters. Typically, clerks receive 1 to 2 votes to get in, and sometimes they will have a competitor, sometimes they wouldn't. But however, I did my due diligence, campaigned, and I felt like I needed to earn that position, then feel like it was given to me. And so I was the city clerk for 4 years. And during that 4 years, that I did develop Whitaker's business entities, LSU Series. So, Whitaker Fitness Solutions. I'm sorry. The first LSU series is Whitaker's Notary Services. He does notarize and do office work.
So you decided at some point in time after you got back from the military to get your public notary, just to notarize some things from a business standpoint, or from just income, make some income.
Just to notarize. And so I wanted to consolidate everything in one big package, because so Whitaker's Notary Services, then Whitaker's Fitness Solutions, then Whitaker's Peer Support Services, and I had a lot of trouble in figuring out what they will all look like, what would they do. A lot of being jerked around, being told false information, and that I basically went in to find out and explore different possibilities. One of the good things about this country is that you could be free from an employer and not work, but have your own business.
Yeah.
But however, that's my big goal. I'm working on that plateau, climbing up that ladder. But
there you go. We're all grinding, man. We're all climbing.
We're all exactly. Yeah. So that's grinding and
so you've got the notary part of your business, and that is what do you call that? Like
Whitaker's Notary Services.
Okay, Whitaker's Notary Services. And then you expanded that into the fitness solutions. Talk about that for a little bit, because that's, I think, where the love for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu also kind of crosses in here as well.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. Yes. And so the first thing is to come to mind is to be a personal trainer, but we're working on that certification. I have many big things coming up in my life at the moment, so I had to put that aside. And so that I centered it around Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started that in 2015, and that my best friend had got me into it. And so I had thought, to sell patches, to sell logos, to sell jiu-jitsu gear, and to sponsor athletes. So on my website, I have a list of sponsored athletes that, from my earnings, from my business earnings, that the sponsored athletes are cited on my website. It was my best friend who kind of kicked off Whitaker's Fitness Solutions because of what it could be looking like, because I went to Oregon back in 2018 to visit the place, and I got him started up at a place called Fudish and BJJ, the purple belt. And so I decided, you know what, since he has trouble accessing his bank account, why don't Whitaker's Fitness Solutions sponsor? He's my first sponsored athlete. And then he went on his jiu-jitsu career at that studio until we switched him to another studio out there in the Wild West. And that from there, that I have sponsored other athletes while I was, raking in some cash, and that they're really good people that I have sponsored. And now, not only merchandise and sponsorships. Also, I have the membership. So the membership it's a reimbursement program. I had this one person that did it. He liked it. So you could either pay $20 for the membership program for 1 month or $200. So I'm giving my fellow jiu-jitsu athletes, gi or no gi, but pick one of the two during one day,
Yeah.
that you can do as many tournaments as you possibly want to do in a given month. And that I would then find the two highest scores within the month. Okay. So then if you get first place twice in 1 month, or first and third, but it has to be the highest scores.
Yeah.
Okay, you get a reimbursement. Like for first place, you get 75% of the price of the tournament back. Second, it could be 50% of the price of the tournament. And then third, 25% price of the tournament back to you. So the payouts would be done at the end of the month. Brandon, the Talented from Louisiana, Bacon Rouge, Louisiana, Lafayette, one of the two.
I'm originally from Lafayette.
Yes, yes.
Oh, that's where I was born. It was Lafayette. My dad's from just south of Baton Rouge. So you have good connections you got going in there.
Yeah, good connections. And so he wanted to see how it would work, and if I would go back, do my promises. And he did get the payouts, but he did not want the flip-flops, the mouth guard, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So let's kind of zoom up a little bit. Who are these sponsored individuals? Like what qualifies an individual to be sponsored through Whitaker Fitness Solutions?
Well, of course, my best friend was just, always qualified, because he got me into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Sure.
And so, and plus he has a special place in my heart. But in any event, I interview Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes, and if we find that we were a good match, and then I would sponsor them.
Okay.
I would like to sponsor brown belts and above. I can do purple and blue.
Sure.
Which I'm a blue belt myself. So that, I kind of look for character, look for, who they are and what they stand for. Basically record, also personality, and, someone that, if you hear the name, you smile.
Yeah.
Not like.
So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get to is there's a cause behind some of this as well, right? You have patches,
Well,
you have a whole thing associated in this ecosystem. I guess I'm trying to drill
Yes.
into that.
Okay, so within this, I had during the makings of Whitaker Fitness Solutions, just lots of discussions from my friend studio about an organization that they were thinking about to give to me. They gave me a patch, could join with my buddy and I, Kevin, and it's called Grapplers for Autism. The patch has to do with between me and him, could join together in a puzzle piece. And I didn't really know how to run the program, what to do with it, and so forth and so on. And I had decided to get it incorporated with get an EIN number with the IRS, and then get incorporated by the state of Delaware. And that the main purpose of Grassroots for Autism is to raise money for grapplers who have autism or other intellectual disabilities, to get them into these studios and have those different studios around the country pledge that they would be a safe place, in a place that would house as members.
That's a beautiful thing, man. That I tell you what, everybody should be welcome on the mats, 100%. And being a safe place and being a welcoming place and having a good culture, regardless of what walk of life someone comes from, is awesome. So you've been doing this for how long now?
Well, I've been putting everything in the thinking mode for since 2018, and that the pandemic has kind of like made things a bit rough. I had no idea what would it look like. I kind of felt it was funny during the pandemic. I was selling patches, but I felt like since the pandemic has been laying off a little bit, that there's some room for me to expand and do and try some really great things. And so it's been in the making since 2018, and now I have my own Grapplers for Autism Facebook page.
Nice.
You know,
We'll put a link to that in the show notes. So if you're listening to the podcast, go ahead and go to the description and then go ahead and click through and check out that Grapplers for Autism page.
and that I encourage for all the studios to get involved. I encourage people to get donations. If they give a donation, they would get the Brian and Kevin patches. And my buddy Kevin is so psyched about this. He's like doing cartwheels. And that my big announcement is that I closed in a house in Central Point, Oregon.
Oh,
And
great.
yes,
You're
and
headed out west.
the Wild West, and that it's going to join the jiu-jitsu studio over there, and plus go to work and see what it's like to live in a house. But in any event, I'm looking for that. Also, I want to also mention that I have Whitaker's peer support services, in that I have to tell you that there is so much bureaucracy within it. And however, the bureaucrats, I just got done with a Zoom meeting with them last week, and they're giving me like different ways out of the bureaucratic mess, like to have like a drop-in center.
Yeah.
And that, and so then, because of the war in Ukraine, that I developed a nonprofit called Whitaker's Peer Support Services / the Ukraine Fund, and that my goal is to connect the peers within the Ukraine, peers as in general people, through this website. They could comment and write to each other, and also the public could provide donations. Yes, I did do all the paperwork with the IRS and also the state of Delaware to make this to be, and that no one has yet made a donation, but yet I would like the donations to help out. And that I realized that there's such a long list of people that are trying to help, but my thought was that instead of just throwing money aimlessly at different organizations, also have a way for the Ukrainians to connect and write to each other. There's this one person from the Ukraine that had printed out my QR code, and he said that he put 4 copies of it around the volunteer center.
Yeah.
And also, I just want to mention that Whitaker's Peer Support Services will got a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture to have a high tenor built at the Rose Hill Community Center in Delaware. So in any event, all of this is still developing. My newsletters are available for all three entities, and
Yeah.
that I've been passing them around. Um, so I am really excited to see what this year has to bring about um, for my entities. I
Yeah.
really want Grapplers for Autism to flourish. I just want to quickly say on one of the things you asked about, I did run for city clerk. It was I was there for all 4 years term. I represented 5,500 people in the city.
Yeah.
Um, I have to say that it was one big adventure, and that um, I wanted to run for Newcastle County Council President, and that I received 35,681 votes with as an independent party candidate. I got 15% of the vote. I did not win. However, I did run for Newcastle City Council President, and I lost, and I'm at peace with that. But however, because it did frees me up to do so much more in
Yeah.
life, I do anticipate to have a political life in the future, but I want to take care of myself and also my loved ones, and also, kind of work harder on my business.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of zoom up just a little bit from the business standpoint. I mean, clearly you have dedicated quite a bit of your time to supporting folks with you said that you were advising the state on audiology and speech pathology and some of those types of things. You've
Correct.
been supporting folks with learning disabilities, or and I don't have the right words for the
That's
groups
fine.
or classifications, but what gravitated you into support of those types of individuals with those dispositions?
Well, throughout my younger years, I had extreme earaches when I was little, and that I began talking when I was 4. And that, so the state of Pennsylvania had considered me as a child with developmental delays, and which is true, because talking at 4 is a delay.
Sure.
So then I went to a special school and Head Start programs in Pennsylvania. And then when I moved to Delaware, I was diagnosed with a mild learning disability to K through 12. And so, although eventually I ended up being a mainstream student,
Yeah.
yeah, which mainstream is pretty cool. So get you in special ed, you are also in classroom with different other people with different diagnoses and different disabilities.
Yeah.
And so you would have an appreciation or an understanding of the different classmates that you had in your younger years. And you may not know everything about your classmate or your schoolyard friend, but in any event, that I always been a very compassionate and caring person. And so,
So you're curious about helping these individuals, like even as a kid,
yes,
seeing kind of the things that they're going through, their lived experiences, the various different classifications or things around the needs that people have in order to live kind of productive lives or functions. And then so after you came back from the military, clearly that's what you gravitated towards, things that you knew.
yeah, because the thing is that like in the military, that like in my 20s, I always been a believer in mental health, that
Yeah.
is there. People want me to advocate on mental health causes, that but I didn't really understand say, what to advocate for because you can't really see it. However, join the United States Army and then you will see you become a believer in mental health for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure that you become a total believer in mental health because to say the seeing some scenarios that you would reach and you would even personally with me, I met the dark side of the army in Korea, and however that I got to say that I believe her in mental health, and so
Yeah.
and
Well,
then you come out and go, okay, well, I'm convinced.
yeah. Well, Brian, you kind of took us full circle here, my man, and we're just coming up on time here on the hour. So I want to make sure that I shout these things out again. Grapplers for Autism is the entity that you are putting out into the world and hoping people
Yes,
participate in. Also, you've got Whitaker Business Solutions as well. You've got the peer support services associated with that. You have your notary services. You have your fitness solutions as part of that enterprise as well. Is there anything before we part ways here today that you want to shout out for the people that I haven't covered?
um,
Or maybe a parting message or advice or any kind of thing that that's kind of stuck with you along this journey.
one thing for sure, I just want to let everyone know that you're not alone, and that just call and reach out to people that even though Facebook and other social media platforms could be a real nuisance, that it could be really great and being contacted by a long lost friend or someone that would ask for forgiveness for being mean to you, and that always go out there and making friends and connect with the world and connect with other people. Secondly, um, have faith in yourself and be a believer. I'm very religious, so I pray all the time. So, but in any event, I also encourage that everyone that listens to this podcast uh, look for Whitaker's business entities, look for Grapplers for Autism, and send a donation to Grapplers for Autism to the Ukrainian Fund, all those different causes. And if you do grapple, please help out those that may have more complications that you do. Make them feel like you have it's a safe place. And also, I would like for everyone to please be involved.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're speaking to the listeners' hearts out there is ensuring awareness and involvement and support of your community and all those individuals who are inside of that community. So, Brian
Yes.
Whitaker, my man, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. What a pleasure it was to talk through your story, your journey, all the interesting and various things that you're up to and that you've done. And I'm wishing you nothing but the best in life and your endeavors moving forward, and safe travels on your way out west to Oregon.
Yes. So it's going to be a family trip across country.
Yeah, well done, my man.
Right,
All
don't
right,
be a stranger.
you as well. And again, thanks for your time today. Cheers.
Okay, bye.